The story you're about to hear is a tough one to tell. It took extreme strength and remarkable courage for one of Charles Woods' victims to share her story, but she says she felt like she had to. It all started 21 years ago here on Washington Street West. And as you'll see, the story ends here too for Charles Woods. Police called this area his hunting ground, and they were afraid he was preparing to attack again. If anyone knows fear,
I will never forget his haunting eyes. He has the most evil, blackish eyes I've ever seen in my life.
it's Lisa.
He's a very terrifying human being, and he should never be out on the streets.
She's talking about a man named Charles Woods.
And it feels like it was yesterday sometimes.
It was the spring of 2001, and police across the Kanawha Valley were on the hunt for a serial rapist, a man driving a small red truck who they believed was responsible for a dozen attacks.
Drive around areas in the city. He might look for a female just walking in a particular area, maybe a high drug area, and ask her if she needed a ride.
Lisa was 39. She'd become Woods' next victim when she was walking down West Washington Street. A man driving a red truck asked if she needed a ride and agreed to take her to Florida Street. Instead, he headed towards Sissonville, where she told Charleston police Woods held a knife to her throat and raped her behind an abandoned house.
Once he got her in the vehicle, it was he was in control, total control.
More than a month would pass. Woods would take more victims before he was tracked down in Milton.
We had information that they needed, they had information that we needed, and it was just communication between both agencies that led to the arrest.
I am certainly glad to have him off the streets, and so should everyone else.
By summer, Woods was facing a 16-count indictment out of Kanawha County that accused him of kidnapping and raping 4 victims. One of them was a teenage girl. His weapon of choice, a knife. He was on his way to spending the rest of his life in prison on the 3 kidnapping charges alone. At least, that's what Lisa thought as she prepared to testify at his trial.
I was ready, and I was pumped up. I felt confident. I was proud that I was going to get to represent not just myself, but every other woman that he had assaulted as a witness. And then they called me They called me on Friday. The trial or jury selection was set for Monday. They called me on Friday and said that they offered him a plea, and he accepted it, which I felt completely like I was nothing, because in my opinion, I think that victims should be at least included. Even a heads up would be nice, but at least included in the whole process of offering a plea. Do you want a plea to be offered? No, I did not.
In May 2002, Woods would take a deal offered by Kanawha prosecutors and plead guilty to 4 of those 16 charges. 2 counts of first-degree sexual abuse for one of the victims, and 2 counts of third-degree sexual assault for another. Lisa has lived the last 20 years not knowing her name, her charges, and what happened to her was never included in that deal.
If you knew that at the time,
I would have thrown a fit. I would have called you then and gone on camera and said, "This is ridiculous. This is a travesty. This is so unfair."
Woods would go on to be sentenced to 4 consecutive terms of 1 to 5 years in prison. In Cabell County, where he was also facing charges for raping a Kentucky woman at Beach Fork State Park, a judge would run that sentence alongside Kanawha County's. He'd be out by October 2013. In less than a year, he'd rape again, this time again in Cabell County. Prosecutors said he offered a saleswoman a ride home. Instead, he drove to an abandoned home on Kessler Avenue in Huntington, where he brutally raped her. Neighbors who heard the victim's screams called police.
do you feel like more could have been done in 2002 when they're making this plea agreement that could have stopped him and whatever happened in Cap?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, he kidnapped me. He raped me with a knife at my throat. I thought I was going to die, and they don't even include my charges. on his plea.
Another deal was on the table for Woods by 2016 that drastically reduced his possible prison time. This time, a Kennedy plea. He didn't have to admit any guilt to the 2 counts of first-degree sexual abuse he agreed prosecutors had enough evidence to convict him of. Again, a kidnapping charge that carries a possible lifetime sentence dropped. Judge Paul Farrell ordered him to serve 2 to 10 years in prison, but said Woods would be on supervised release for 50 years. Farrell calling him a rapist, saying he wished he was getting more time than the sentencing guidelines restricted him to. He told Woods he should never be released. 4 years later, in the fall of 2020, he'd be back on the streets.
Good morning, sir.
And back to his old stomping grounds on the west side of Charleston.
What's your name?
Charles Woods.
Okay.
This is Charleston Police body camera video of just one of at least 6 encounters Woods would have with Charleston Police.
I don't even know where my wallet is.
The run-ins on West Washington Street, the same area Lisa says she first encountered him. They started about a year after his second release from prison, and while he was serving that 50 years of supervised release.
I know what you're doing out tonight. I know you're looking for a girl, all right?
No, I'm not. No, sir.
Well,
no, sir.
I've seen the same thing you've been doing all night, all right?
I just got out here. I just went to...
I know you were slow rolling down past Water Street. You passed me there. You came back, slow rolling down Ford Street. I know they're out.
No, sir.
And I know that's what you have a history of doing that.
Yes, I do.
Each time he'd be issued a citation through city court for soliciting a prostitute. Each time he'd check in with his probation officer, he'd lie about having any contact with police, something his supervised release mandated.
Why am I getting a ticket for prostitution?
It wasn't until after that, whenever I was doing a report and looked into our database, that I began to see some other things and realize who Charles Woods actually was.
Special Enforcement Unit Detective Wyatt McCabe said they knew they had to act fast. The complaints from women were already coming, and McCabe feared Woods was preparing to rape again.
Making complaints on him that he was following them around, making them feel uncomfortable, until in the recent past, those complaints got worse, where people were actually contacting law enforcement saying that Mr. Woods was not just following them around and stalking them, but was moving past that to him trying to force them in the truck with him.
McCabe was able to file a felony against Woods for third offense prostitution based on Woods' 2 prostitution convictions in city court.
As soon as we found out who he was and what we were dealing with, the ball was already rolling on our end. It was just a matter of time until we were able to properly put him away and hopefully keep him there.
Now McCabe is reviewing unsolved rape cases, seeing if Woods could be the connection he's been looking for.
I definitely believe it's a possibility, and we're turning over every stone that we can.
For Lisa, that fear she's felt for the last 20 years isn't gone with Woods being behind bars.
He never should have gotten out the first time he was in. Okay, and now that they see that he's such a repeat offender, he's not going to stop.
And the anger she feels toward the justice system that continued to cut him deal after deal, dropping charge after charge, isn't gone either.
I hope they can close their eyes and sleep well at night. Actually, I don't. I hope they have nightmares like I do. I hope they do. I'm furious.
Woods will go before Judge Farrell tomorrow. Now remember, that's the same judge that wanted him locked up for good in 2016, but that plea deal and the sentencing guidelines wouldn't allow for it. He now could go back to prison for 50 years for violating that supervised release. He's already 61 years old. I'll be at that hearing tomorrow, and we'll let you know what the judge decides then. For now, reporting in Charleston, Leslie Rubin, Eyewitness News.